Every morning, the house was different. A new door would appear, and behind it, something watched from the dark. It wasn't long before the rooms started opening on their own, and letting things out. I wasn't supposed to hear this story. It was told to me by a friend of my father's, late one night when the drinks had loosened our tongues and the power had gone out during a thunderstorm. We were staying at his hunting cabin up in Vermont, and something about the shadows in that room made this particular story feel heavier, realer. He said the house in question belonged to a cousin of his, a man named Elliot. Elliot had inherited a small farmhouse just outside of Glover. It was old, early 1900s at least, with a wood stove in the kitchen and cedar-paneled walls that always smelled faintly of mold, no matter how hard you scrubbed. The kind of house that seemed to hum with its own breath when you were alone inside. Elliot was a loner. No kids. No wife. Just a dog named Moose and a collection of antique radios that he never got working. He'd moved into the house in late October, thinking he'd use the solitude to work on his writing. He was a journalist once, but by then, he mostly kept to himself, sending the occasional article to small-town publications. The kind of guy who enjoyed silence and strong coffee more than people. The first time he noticed something was wrong, it was subtle. He'd woken up one morning and stepped into the kitchen to feed Moose, when he realized the wood stove had shifted. Not by much, just a few inches, but enough that the edge of it was no longer flush with the wall. There was a narrow seam behind it that hadn't been there the day before. He assumed it had something to do with the foundation shifting. Old house, old problems. He made a mental note to check it later and went on with his day. But that night, as he was closing up the kitchen, he felt a draft. Not the kind you get from loose window panes or thin insulation. This one was cold, sharp, like air coming from a cave. He leaned behind the stove and saw something that hadn't been there before. The faint outline of a door frame. It didn't make sense. The wall had always been solid. No hinges, no knob, no indication that there was anything behind it. And yet, now there was a door. A real one. Painted the same faded green as the kitchen walls, with a handle that looked slightly newer than the rest of the house. Moose stood frozen, hackles up, refusing to go near it. Elliot didn't open it. Not that night. He was rational, methodical. He took a picture of it, locked the kitchen, and told himself he'd call a contractor in the morning. Only when morning came, the door was open. Behind it was a room he had never seen before. It was small, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, with wooden floors and a single high window that let in dusty light. The walls were the same pale green, and the air smelled like iron. There was no furniture, no sign that anyone had been in it, just the feeling that the space had been waiting. He checked the house's floor plan, which he still had from when he inherited the property. The space behind the kitchen was supposed to be solid earth. There was no way a room could exist there without expanding the house itself. But the exterior dimensions hadn't changed. He walked the perimeter twice. Nothing. That night, he tried to ignore it. Shut the door. Pushed the stove back. Turned on some music to drown out the silence. But Moose wouldn't stop growling. He sat facing the kitchen all night, ears pinned back, refusing to eat or sleep. The next morning, there were scratches on the inside of the new room's door. Thin ones, like made by fingernails. 3 sets, each starting low to the floor and dragging upward. That's when Elliot stopped sleeping. He tried rationalizing it. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe the house was messing with his head. He set up a motion camera in the kitchen, one of those cheap ones you can sync with your phone. He aimed it at the door and stayed up to watch the feed in real time. Nothing happened for hours. Just static and silence. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the door creaked open. No one came out. No one went in. But something moved inside. It was quick, just a flicker in the corner of the frame. Like a shadow darting from the right side of the room to the left, then stopping directly in front of the camera. The feed cut out. When it returned, the door was closed again. The scratches were deeper the next morning. And this time, there was something else. A humming sound coming from behind the door. Low, rhythmic, like someone whispering in a language Elliot couldn't quite catch. He called my dad's friend the next day. Told him he was thinking of burning the whole place down. Joking maybe, but not really. The guy told him to leave. Just pack a bag and go. Elliot agreed. But when he went to the front door, there was another one waiting beside it. Identical in shape and color. Same knob. Same frame. Just there. Like the house was multiplying itself. He opened it, and behind it was another room. Bigger this time. No windows. No light. Just the sound of breathing, not his own. Elliot didn't sleep that night. He sat in the living room with Moose, clutching a flashlight in one hand and the remote feed from the motion camera in the other. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift in the wind, made his heart jolt. The house no longer felt like his. It felt like something was breathing through it, stretching its walls 1 inch at a time. The next morning, he walked past the front room where the new door had appeared and noticed something strange. The layout of the hallway had changed. Slightly. The angle of the ceiling seemed different. The floorboards slanted where they hadn't been before. It was like the geometry of the place was being rewritten behind his back. He went back to the kitchen. The door behind the stove was gone. In its place, smooth drywall. But on the opposite side of the room, just next to the pantry, was a new one. This one was deep red, narrow, with a black iron handle that didn't match anything else in the house. Elliot opened it, slowly. The room beyond was cold, noticeably colder than the rest of the house. The air inside smelled like wet leaves and rusted metal. There were no windows again, but the walls were covered in wallpaper this time. Hundreds of tiny eyes, printed over and over in neat little rows, all staring straight ahead. He didn't step inside. Not then. He closed the door, nailed a chair across the frame, and went to the backyard to check the property line. He brought a tape measure with him. If the house was growing, there should be signs: an expanding roof line, shifted foundation, fresh earth disturbed. But everything looked the same. He stood at the edge of the tree line and stared at the house. And for a second, just a second, he saw something move in one of the upstairs windows. A silhouette, tall and still, watching him. The problem was, Elliot had never been upstairs. The second floor was sealed off. Rotted stairwell. No safe way up. He hadn't even tried. That night, the house made a new sound. A soft ticking, like a metronome buried in the walls. It started around 11 p.m. and didn't stop. Even when he turned on music, even when he wore earplugs, the ticking kept bleeding into the edges of his thoughts, steady and mocking. Moose began pacing in circles. At 3:14 a.m., Elliot checked the hallway again. Another door had appeared, this one at the base of the stairs. Bright white, almost glowing. The kind of white that doesn't exist in old houses. It hurt his eyes to look at. The door wasn't shut. It was open about an inch. And from the other side, he heard humming. But it wasn't the same sound as before. This one sounded like a lullaby. Out of tune. Sung by something with too many throats. He locked himself in the bathroom until morning. When he came out, the door was gone. But the humming wasn't. It followed him. Faint, like it was coming from just beneath the floorboards. Over the next week, the pattern became clear. Every night at exactly 3:14 a.m., a new room would appear. A new door. Sometimes hidden behind furniture. Sometimes just standing in the middle of the wall, like it had always been there. And each room came with a new sound. One had the distant sound of screaming, muffled like underwater. Another had the click-click-click of fingernails against glass. One room had no sound at all, but the silence inside it made Elliot feel like he was underwater, like something was pressing against his chest. He documented everything, took notes, pictures, recorded audio, but the recordings never played back correctly. They came out distorted, like something was interfering. Sometimes the tapes were blank. Other times, they played sounds he never heard in person, whispering in foreign tongues, static punctuated by distant laughter. He posted about it once, on a paranormal forum. It was taken down within the hour. One night, he made a mistake. He opened one of the rooms completely. This one had no door, just an archway that appeared where the hallway mirror used to be. The room beyond looked like a child's bedroom. Pale blue wallpaper, wooden floors, a crib in the corner. A mobile hanging from the ceiling spun slowly, even though there was no breeze. Elliot stepped inside. The air was thick, like syrup. It stuck to his skin, made his eyes water. He walked to the crib. Inside, there was nothing, but the mobile stopped spinning, and the door, the archway behind him, was gone. He ran to where it had been, smacked his palms against the wall, screamed, but no sound came out. The room was sealed, windowless, soundless, just the crib, and the mobile, and a small stuffed rabbit in the corner with no eyes. He doesn't remember how long he was in there. He blacked out, or lost time, or maybe the house let him out. He woke up on the kitchen floor, drenched in sweat. Moose was gone. The back door was wide open. Muddy paw prints led into the woods. He searched for hours. Nothing. That night, no door appeared. But in his bedroom, above his bed, a new crack had formed in the ceiling. thin at first, then wider, and from within it a voice whispered, "Thank you for coming in." The morning after Moose vanished, Elliot packed a bag. He didn't care about the notes, the recordings, or even the furniture. He just needed to get out. He tossed a few essentials into his truck, wallet, keys, his old laptop, and didn't even bother locking the door behind him. As far as he was concerned, the house could keep everything else. But when he got to the road, something was wrong. He drove for almost 30 minutes, following the same gravel path that led back to the main highway. But it didn't end. It just kept winding. The same trees, the same curve in the road, the same dead deer on the shoulder with its eyes missing. He stopped the truck, stepped out, marked a tree with his pocket knife, drove 10 more minutes. Same tree, same mark. He turned around, heart thudding in his chest, and floored it in the opposite direction. It took him right back to the house. It was like the woods around him had become a wheel, turning him back no matter what direction he chose. The GPS didn't help. It couldn't get a signal anymore. The compass app on his phone spun in slow, lazy circles, like it didn't know where north was anymore. He sat in the truck for an hour, engine idling, staring at the house. It looked normal, completely unchanged. Quiet, still, waiting. That night, the ticking returned, faster now. And layered beneath it, faint and wet, was the sound of chewing. Elliot bolted the doors, nailed them shut, blocked every window with furniture. He told himself he'd wait until morning, try again with the sun overhead. Maybe this was all just panic. Maybe he'd just gotten turned around. But the sun never came. He woke up the next morning to gray light, dull and colorless, like the air itself had gone flat. No birds, no wind, just the sound of something dripping, somewhere inside the house. He followed it. It was coming from the upstairs stairwell, the one that had been rotted and unusable when he moved in. But now the wood was clean, restored, brand new. There were boot prints on the steps. Not his. He climbed slowly, one hand on the rail. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched far longer than it should have. The upstairs had only ever had 2 bedrooms. Now there were 6 doors on either side, evenly spaced, all identical. Numbered, 201 to 212. He chose the first door on the left. Inside, it was night, pitch black, despite it being daytime just seconds before. And there was something in the room, breathing. He backed out, closed the door. The number on it changed. Now it read 313. Elliot turned to run, but the hallway behind him had vanished. In its place was a wall of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of him. In one, he was screaming. In another, he was asleep. In another, he was missing his eyes. He turned and opened another door. This one led back to the kitchen, but it was older. The wallpaper peeled. The light flickered, and a chair was spinning slowly in the center of the room, like someone had just left it. He had no memory of walking through that door. No sense of time. Every room he entered after that led somewhere different. Sometimes places that didn't belong in the house. A hospital hallway, a train platform, a nursery filled with mannequins. Each time the sound followed him, that ticking now louder, now inside his skull, echoing behind his eyes. He eventually found the front door again. He ran to it, threw it open, only to find himself staring into the basement. There were stairs, wet ones, and a voice. Low, gentle, just 2 words. Stay here. He slammed the door. It opened again behind him. Now it led to a hotel corridor. Room 418. The same number repeated on every door, all the way down the hall. He screamed, threw a lamp through the nearest window. But behind the glass wasn't the outside, it was another room. And inside that room was Elliot, sitting in a chair, watching himself. He ran. Didn't know where. Didn't know how long. Time became water. Reality curled at the edges like burnt paper. He finally collapsed in a room with no doors. Just one window. Through it, he saw the house again from the outside. Lit in the moonlight, quiet and small, just like it had always been. And he saw himself in the window, waving. That version of him smiled, then turned around and walked away. When Elliot woke again, he was back in the original bedroom. Same bed, same lamp, same cracked ceiling. He looked at the date on his phone. It had been 3 weeks. No missed calls, no texts, just one new photo in his gallery. He didn't remember taking it. It was of a room he didn't recognize. And in the corner of that room, just barely visible in the shadows, was Moose, staring straight into the lens, mouth open, like mid-bark or mid-scream. Elliot told himself he was still in control, that if he could just hold on to some kind of routine, wake up, make coffee, write a few pages in his notebook, he could outlast whatever the house was doing. He stopped opening doors. He stopped wandering the hallways. He chose one room, the living room, and stayed in it as much as he could. He didn't eat much. The food in the pantry had started to taste like dust, and every time he poured water from the tap, it came out dark for a few seconds before clearing. He checked the pipes. Nothing wrong. But it kept happening. At night, the furniture shifted slightly. Just an inch or two, but enough to notice. He began marking the floor with chalk. Every morning, the couch would be a little farther from the wall. Every morning, the fireplace would be a little wider. One morning, he looked at the mirror above the mantel and didn't recognize his own reflection. It was him, but not quite. His eyes looked darker. His skin had taken on a grayish tint. And he was smiling, even though Elliot wasn't. He covered the mirror with a blanket and didn't look at it again. A few days later, or maybe it was the same day, time had started to fold in on itself. He noticed something worse, his voice. It didn't sound like his anymore. When he spoke out loud, the tone was flatter, slower, almost like it echoed slightly, even in the small room. He recorded himself on his phone and played it back. The voice that answered wasn't his. It was deeper, hollow, and when he said his name, the playback stuttered halfway through, repeating the last syllable. Elliot. He stopped speaking after that. He wrote instead, pages and pages in the notebook, trying to document every change, every sound, every new room, though the house had slowed down, almost like it was resting, watching, letting him adjust. But he could feel something moving beneath the floor. It wasn't mice. It was heavier, slow, rhythmic. He pressed his ear to the floor once and heard something breathing. Deep, deliberate inhales, from below the foundation, like the house itself had lungs. And then came the markings. They started on his skin, tiny bruises, perfectly circular, in rows along his arms and neck. Each morning a few more. He tried covering them with long sleeves, but they itched. And when he scratched them, the skin beneath felt soft, too soft, like paper. One night, he found a new one on the back of his hand. But this time it wasn't a bruise. It was a symbol, a small spiral, etched under the skin like a brand. When he touched it, he felt pressure in his ears like altitude sickness. He tried washing it off, scrubbing until the skin broke. The spiral didn't fade. It spread. By the next morning, it had wrapped around his wrist. He went to the bathroom mirror and saw that the veins beneath his eyes had turned black. Not bruised. Black. Like ink. He screamed. But the sound that came out wasn't human. It was high-pitched, sharp. And from the hallway, the house answered. A low creaking, slow footsteps, and a door opening, followed by a long exhale. He didn't check to see which room it was. He locked himself in the bathroom and stared at the spiral until his vision blurred. He remembered something then. A story his father told him once, about a town in Vermont that vanished off the maps after a sinkhole swallowed the main road. No survivors, no wreckage, just a hole where the buildings used to be. And how afterward, people in neighboring towns started hearing voices in the trees. Elliot used to laugh at that story. He wasn't laughing now, because the trees outside the house had stopped moving. No wind, no birds, just stillness. And the house was whispering to him again. Only now, it was using his own voice. From the vents, from the sink drain, from the static on the radio he hadn't touched in weeks. Repeating things he'd written in his notebook, mocking him. He burned the notebook. The pages screamed. Literally. The fire let out a shriek that split the air, and for a second, the house went completely silent. The air stilled. The lights flickered. And then, somewhere deep inside the walls, something laughed. That night, he didn't sleep. He couldn't, because the crack above his bed had widened. It pulsed, like a vein, and from inside it, something long and thin began to emerge. It wasn't bone. It wasn't wood. It looked like a finger, but longer than it should be, and jointed wrong. It didn't move. It just stayed there, hanging, pointing at him. He moved to the couch, but the couch was gone. In its place was a new door. Black wood, brass handle, a single word carved into it, return. He didn't touch it. He slept on the floor, arms wrapped around himself like a shield. But he could feel the house breathing again. Slow, deep, warm, and he knew it was dreaming. Elliot stopped trying to track the days. The clocks inside the house no longer worked. The sun, when it rose, never crossed the sky. It just hovered behind the clouds, casting the same dull gray over everything. His phone still showed the time, but it would jump, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, and the date never moved past November 6th. Every time he tried to leave, the door led somewhere else. He stopped checking for a way out. Instead, he started noticing reflections. Not just in mirrors, in windows, in the glass of picture frames, in the turned-off TV. He'd catch movement, a flicker, a shift, like someone stepping out of view just as he turned his head. But it wasn't until he opened the basement door that he saw it fully. He hadn't planned to go down there. He never did. The door had stayed locked, nailed shut since the first week. But this time it was open, waiting. A pale yellow light pulsed at the bottom of the steps, like an old bulb struggling to stay alive. He didn't bring a flashlight. He didn't need one. The basement was different. Clean. Too clean. Polished floor. White walls. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. It looked like a hospital corridor, not a farmhouse basement. And standing at the end of the hallway was Elliot. Same face. Same clothes. But different eyes. This version smiled. It didn't blink. Elliot froze. His mouth went dry. The other version lifted a hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed behind him. Elliot turned. There was another door. He hadn't seen it before. Painted blue. The kind of blue you only see in dreams. Cold and unnatural. He turned back to the hallway. It was empty. The other Elliot was gone. He opened the blue door. Inside was a room with no corners. Everything was curved. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, all blending together like the inside of a shell. And in the center, on a pedestal, sat a mirror. But it wasn't a reflection he saw. It was a recording. Him walking through the house. From days ago. Or maybe days ahead. The image kept looping. Elliot stepping into the kitchen, pausing, turning toward the stove, and vanishing into the wall. Over and over. He tried to touch the glass. His fingers passed through it. He stepped in. And the scene changed. Now he was watching himself sleep. In the bedroom. His real self, curled up, breathing heavily. But in the corner of the room was something else. Tall. Black. Motionless. Watching. It turned to the mirror. And smiled. Elliot staggered back. The image dissolved. And behind the pedestal now stood the other Elliot again. But this time his face was wrong. It sagged. Warped. As if someone had tried to stretch skin over a mannequin and gave up halfway. Its mouth opened, and Elliot heard himself speak, but not with his voice. It came from somewhere behind his own ears. You were supposed to leave. He ran. Didn't look back. He tore through the house. Room after room, door after door. Every one leading somewhere different. Places that weren't real. A classroom full of empty desks. A church with candles that burned upside down. A cave where the walls whispered in his father's voice. He screamed. He cried. He begged. No one answered. Until he stepped into the kitchen again. And someone was already there. Sitting at the table. Drinking coffee. Himself. But calmer. Cleaner. Less damaged. This version looked up, smiled, and said nothing. Just tapped the table once. Elliot sat. The other slid a piece of paper across to him. One word was written in the center. Trade. Elliot shook his head. The other smiled again. Wider this time. Unnaturally wide. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and vanished, leaving a reflection behind that wouldn't go away. Elliot was alone again. But the reflection stayed. Wherever he went in the house, mirrors, glass, puddles of water, the other version stared back. Smiling. Waiting. And now sometimes Elliot would blink, and find himself looking through the other side. There's no front door anymore. It disappeared sometime last week, or maybe last night. The frame's still there, but it just leads into another room now. One I don't recognize. Pale yellow walls. A floor that breathes. Every time I step near it, I hear the sound of my mother crying. Only my mother died when I was 17. I stopped trying to understand. I've learned to listen instead. The house doesn't speak with words. It speaks with patterns. With creaks. With temperature shifts and light changes. When the lamps flicker 3 times, I know something new is coming. When the fridge door opens by itself, I know to hide. And when I hear that low hum in the vents, the one that sounds like my own voice played backwards, I know it's time to run. Not that running helps. The house just folds itself around me again. I've found other people here. Or parts of them. One night, I opened a closet door and found a hand. still warm. No blood. Just a clean wrist, like it had never been attached to anything. On another night, I heard someone sobbing in the attic, but when I climbed the ladder, all I found was a rocking chair still moving and a child's shoe filled with black water. And the worst thing I ever found was the photo album. It was under the floorboards of the second bedroom, the one that keeps changing wallpaper. The album looked new, leather-bound, smelled like cedar. Every photo inside it was of me. Not just here, everywhere. My childhood, my teenage years, college, things I never remembered posing for, moments I never remembered happening, and at the very end, a picture I haven't taken yet. I'm standing in the hallway, back to the camera, facing a door marked home. That door doesn't exist. At least, not yet. But the house is building it. I've seen it in my dreams. Or maybe I'm dreaming now. It's hard to tell the difference. Sometimes I hear voices outside the windows. Friends, family, people calling my name. But when I open the curtains, it's just the same woods, still, endless, silent. Not even the wind moves through them anymore. Like the house is the only thing left that breathes. My skin's changed. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean it's not skin anymore. It's smoother, cold, more like wax than flesh. I cut myself once just to check, no blood. Just a faint, pale smoke that smelled like burnt sugar. I think the house is remaking me. I don't need to sleep. But I do, because that's when it teaches me things. The walls open in my dreams. Show me how they connect, where the new rooms come from, what they're for. I don't understand it all yet, but I'm beginning to. Some of the rooms aren't meant for me. Some are just holding things, memories, shadows, faces, all stacked behind the walls like insulation. Sometimes I hear them scratching. Sometimes I hear them praying. And sometimes they whisper my name in unison. Elliot, not in fear, in worship, because I've been here the longest. And the house rewards that. Last night, it gave me a gift. A door, jet black, no handle, no hinges, just a seam in the wall, shaped like a person. My shape. It pulsed when I touched it, and when I stepped through, I was somewhere else, back in the real world, or something that looked like it, a grocery store parking lot, people walking past, laughing, talking, cars humming by. I tried to speak to them. No one saw me. I stood in front of a man and screamed. He walked right through me. I wasn't there. Not really. The house had let me see it. Just for a second, to remember what I lost, to know how far gone I really was. Then the black door opened again, and I came back. I think I always do. Maybe the other version of me, the one I saw drinking coffee, he made the trade. Maybe I'm what gets left behind when people disappear. Maybe the house doesn't take people. It makes copies, keeps the ones that fit, and I fit now. I don't know how many rooms are left, but they keep coming, one every night, always different, always familiar. I think I've been in some of them before, in other lives, in other stories. The walls remember me. They hum when I pass. Sometimes I hear someone new screaming down the hallway, and I know someone else has arrived. Another visitor, another sacrifice, another me. I've stopped trying to warn them. What would I say? Don't open the door? Don't follow the sound? Don't stay too long? They always do. We always do. And when they do, the house grows. One more room. One more memory. One more version of the truth. I don't know if I'm still Elliot, or if I'm just the shadow he left behind. But I do know one thing. The house isn't done with me. And I don't think it ever will be. That was today's story. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought in the comments. Also, tell me if you've ever heard of anything similar happening near where you live. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more chilling stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.